Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan, back for a Locked On Texas Tech special edition, wrapping up the week with another Matador Mob mailbag. You take the wheel, steer us any direction you like. We waste no time because we got another full bucket, Chris, and we begin sort of where we last left off. Some conversation generated among Locked On Texas Tech viewers, listeners, Matador Mob insiders, as a result of our conversation regarding the future of the college football postseason, changes, and all that could entail for Texas Tech, the Big 12, and the world. Check out the episode from a prior day if you missed that the first time around to catch up. But that led to this question from Chaz talking about essentially a seat at that their big boy table. He says, clearly the rest of the country took notice at the money that was spent by Texas Tech this go around. Does this position Tech to have a seat at the table in the future, or does it ultimately come down to winning big? I can't believe we're on the other side of this. Vanderbilt, Rutgers, Purdue, Northwestern. Chaz is spiraling. It's going to be okay, Chaz. What do you think about the question, Chris?
Yeah, well, there's a variety of things to look at and consider. So is this more of a realignment question, like big picture? So. Yeah, okay. So
whether it's Super League or like actually a conference, I don't really know, but I think a lot of people have that general thought of, are we going to be in as opposed to out of that category in the future?
Well, you're definitely on the right side of this, but define this,
right?
And that's the question. There will be another round. I think everybody's prepared for this around 2030-31 range. Okay, but some of the groundwork could be laid as we've seen in the years leading up to that. I think everybody in the tech world and really in the college world is prepared for another shift. I just don't know if anybody knows ultimately what that looks like just yet. But you've got various media rights coming up around that. And so what is the sport? I mean, we've had zero to no stability in this sport, because we're talking football here, really in the last 3 to 5 years. Every 6 months it changes, whether it's we're doing this, let's tweak that, let's introduce this, let's sue this and cause this, let's have an expansion here, realign. I mean, so it's hard to like kind of see off into the distance and know exactly what we're talking about here when you're just getting into the early stages of 2025 when we're talking about four to 6 years from now, because I can't even tell you really what this fall is officially going to look like yet. And that's a true statement. We think we kind of have an idea, but we're not real sure. So, but your resources and your wherewithal and your brick and mortar and yes, your ability to win and draw in relevance all factors into that. Sure, absolutely it does. Now, what does that ultimately look like? I don't know if anybody ultimately knows, because what are you trying to get into? Are you trying to get into a 48 team, and everybody else deal? Are you trying to get into hey, there's only going to be 2 leagues that are running this whole thing and everybody else is just cast aside? I mean, what exactly are you trying to get into?
I'm interested in you saying the number 48, because I was going to ask you about, when you say you're on the right side of this, should I still be viewing the right side being like a category of 65-ish, like we knew a previous Power 5 landscape to be? Does it shrink a little? Does it shrink a lot? And then you throw out 48, so I thought that was interesting. You think it will shrink maybe a little?
Potentially. But I don't know if we ultimately know that. And I say I just kind of came up with that number, but I could see where it would be, some folks get a haircut and are going, hey, man.
Yeah, there's already a few, right? Bleeding a little out on the West Coast.
Yeah, it's not you. It's not you. It's us. But hey, good luck to you. I mean, and
the scissors got a little too close to the ear. Snip, snip.
And that could cause law. We're just talking a bunch of hypotheticals at this point, but I think that to answer your question, you're in a pretty good spot. I think this is why it was important for certain folks that donated to these causes to pay for something that would stand for a long time, because while facilities or whatever it may be aren't the end all be all, you wanted to put your best foot forward. And I think there were certain folks, Dusty Womble included, in that was most important to him. What can I help out my alma mater and everything for a long time and best position it? Players come and go, and that is massively important right now. There are structures in place that like, say, somebody like Dusty and Cody and some of these other folks have helped build that will be there for, hopefully a long, long time. And they tried to build these things so they would be not let's do it. There's there's football stadiums in your own league that you folks try to, like Baylor, for example, that is not built to last. That they tried to squeeze as much as they could out of McLean Stadium and tried to. There's a lot of covering some warts or some just trying to do it as much as you could, as quickly as you could, or whatever. That I'd be curious how if there's any lasting power with something like that. So. Yes, it's on a river. Yes, that's just an example, but I think you really try to go out of your way to build it in such a way that would last for a long, long time. So I'm not trying to.
Are we talking soil erosion now? You thinking by the end of the year that could be swept away, or what do you know?
No, I'm saying it's cool. That's what one of their selling points. But as far as the
toilet seat next to a septic line. So
yeah, and I didn't mean for Baylor to catch a stray here, but this is
catching a lot of them. They're probably thinking they're not even stray at this point. They're clearly pointed at us. All right. Thank you for that question, Chaz. Appreciate you. This question this is a popular subject this week. The next two subjects, probably the most popular ones among the Matador Mob insiders. Let's see here. We had Thomas, we had Brent, we had Ryan, we had Davis, all asking about, coming off of this Texas Christian outing, Chris, whether or not you could turn this into a quote unquote good loss, if there is such a thing. I guess there's some thought out there that there was some kind of amount of pressure. I think maybe it was Bobby that was referring to this, another Matador Mob insider, talking about, I don't know, some weaknesses that could have been exposed and therefore corrected. Can you stand to benefit from anything you took as far as the yell, or is this just some wishful thinking, you think, for some Red Raiders? First, today's episode brought to you by TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. Now, Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation, an expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. And while they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed. And while you go about your day, it's all happening with no stressing, no worrying, and no waiting. Now, this is Taxes with Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
There's an old saying, you either win or you learn, one of the two. And I'd much rather learn from wins than actually having to learn from a loss. I do think you could buy into looking back on it, like the UCF game turned out to be maybe what you needed at the time. And I'm not sure that you are in the same place with your record and all that had you not suffered through that. I think you learned a lot from that. And there was a lot of differences in the way Grant handled his team and in game and otherwise after that game was played. And I think the defensive numbers have shown you that, how much better they got after just what he would say was an embarrassing effort. And I think they pulled a lot. I think in the TCU game, I think you got kind of tired. I think you got a team's really, a best shot, and all the pomp and circumstance. And here's the thing: there were stretches in that game where you played about as poorly as I had seen you play in about 4 to 6 weeks. Okay, all things considered. And not that you've been perfect, but you did some things that were very uncharacteristic to you. And it doesn't include, just not hitting shots. It was, we talked about this the day after the game, just some turnovers that were unforced. It's not anything the opposition's doing. And then getting out hustled or like the work on the glass, that those things had not happened. And so what was it? You were, 3 games in 6 days and it kind of caught up to you. Was it, man, we're getting this team's best shot because with this number 9 in front of us, and they can kind of put themselves back in the bubble conversation with the win over us. I mean, these are things you have to deal with. It's what Houston's dealing with on a day in and day out basis and everything. I don't think there was anything to glean positively from this one, because it takes you out of the conference championship hunt theoretically. I mean, you're 3 games behind Houston, and it would require you to beat Houston and then Houston to drop 2 others, and then we can have a conversation. But based on what we've seen with just like, 5 games left, there's not a whole lot of reason to think that Houston's going to lose. The wheels are going to come off. Not saying it's not possible, but you need to keep winning and all these things. So while I appreciate somebody trying to pull a positive out of it, I just I guess we'll see, and ultimately we'll know. Maybe it was something that kind of shakes you up a little bit, or kind of shakes you at the core, and you're better from it. I do think there's some things that you'll have to learn on how to play when JT Toppin gets doubled and tripled, and maybe you can. But you were already kind of seeing that anyways. I mean, Oklahoma State did some of these things as well, and you were able to you're able to hit those shots. You just weren't able to in Fort Worth.
Yeah, I believe at this point in Grant McCaslin's tenure that he and his coaching staff will get a lesson of some kind out of every loss for their team. So I will assume you'll benefit from it just by virtue of that. But I can't run out here and start embracing it as a quote unquote good loss. I don't know if there is actually such a thing. And I would say, as far as alleviating some of the pressure, you'd already taken a loss a couple of games prior to that, which I thought was really the point at which you had built up your streak, and maybe there was some pressure growing or some things like that. So that balloon had kind of already been burst. So I think it's just an unfortunate result. Sort of in the same vein, Jose was asking, do you think it'd be better for the team if they lost earlier in the Big 12 tournament, like the team did a few years ago, maybe better rested for the big dance?
I think we have to see how you get to that point. What's the status, the health status of your guys, where you are on the, the seed lines and things like that, to be able to determine that yet. Now, granted, I don't ever want to show up and lose, but there's certainly some times when that's not the worst thing that could happen. When you're kind of playing at a smaller rotation right now, it feels like that Grant has said I need to do a better job of making that rotation bigger. I think 3 games in 3 days isn't a tough. I mean, because you know that regardless, you would finish up on a Saturday if you made it to the championship game, and you would have at least until the next Thursday before you play potentially on Friday too, with that one. So that I don't know. I mean, because you could do yourself some good. I think conference tournaments are a bit overstated as how much it affects your movement, but I think it could help you more than it would ever hurt you. So, and then the rest component certainly is factored in. But I think we have to see what it looks like before you get to that point first, so we know more of the lay of the land and what's the status of all your guys. I mean, so.
Yeah, and so much could change between then and now. So
it's essentially
like the morning of tip-off at the conference tournament.
Yes,
for a better answer on that one. But it's not out of the realm of possibility that maybe you feel that way here or there about your trip through the league tournament. All right, thank you for that question. I mentioned another popular subject. D, Hayden, Glenn, Dylan, and Joe all asking about our guy EY, as a lot of interest has been taken in his game day apparel. Interest has been taken in his availability. They're asking about, timelines. Is there one? Is it injury? Is it something else? Is he done for the season? Is there any grasp on his situation right now? As we roll through a time where really, I think in the front court, you're like, man, any size anywhere that can lend a hand?
Yeah, he's just an interesting case study or situation or whatever. Okay, I don't think he's done for the season, or I think they would have told you that. I think it's an upper body injury. It's a good sign that he's still been traveling and doing some things. And while you need some help on occasion, I just even when healthy, he wasn't really getting thrown in there a lot. And I think what your biggest concern is now is without him, if something were to happen like the JT Toppin ejection, it's like, okay, now what? Because he's not sitting there ready to run in there and help you if he's sitting over there in the Adidas zip up hoodie that he's been wearing in recent games, right? I am curious about him big picture too, though. I just am real curious to see kind of what the thought is on how he factors in long term. You would have hoped, I mean, because he's going to be a junior next year. And while you see some glimpses, I don't know if you're ready to say, hey, you're a starter, you're a key reserve, you can help us win a Big 12 championship. He's a nice piece with some upside. But
Chris, that was the glimpses were last year. Last year was glimpses year. And I think we've all been surprised we didn't see a bigger step taken.
I don't disagree. And even in the 21-minute stint against Houston, which is the last time he played, and it's a big, so he had 4 and 4, and you can and he got thrown into a terrible situation. And so there was a few issues that he had there, but I can't really fault him for a lot of that based on, hey, dude, come save us. And he did just enough to really do just that in some ways.
Welcome to the season. Would you care to rescue us at this moment?
Right. I just wonder what this looks like, though, as you try to construct your team next year, and where all this, what all this looks like, I guess, because there's some serious decisions to make, and you know what the expectations are, but you look at what could be walking out the door. And I just, while it's possible that JT Toppin or Darion Williams could come back, I mean, I don't want to rule that out. I would bet strongly against those possibilities. And again, don't want to totally dismiss it in either case. But odds are it's those two, and then Elijah Hawkins and Kerwin Walton and Chance Miller. This is a lot to replace, a lot of scoring, of rebounding, of culture, and that's why get so excited about Christian Anderson and all that, because he would be a main, and Kevin Overton and Federico. That'd be kind of your what you'd be looking at, and I don't think I'm ready to look at it and go, hey, just plug in EY or Mariella Kuntak and say they can replace JT Toppin. Not sure I'm ready to make that statement just yet. So
I would tap the brakes on that as well.
Yeah. So this is why I'm kind of wondering, like, big picture. But it's in the immediate. I think you could see him in back in uniform here rather quickly. I don't think it's season ending, but
if the dots aren't connecting, the dots aren't connecting. When he's been in uniform, he's been
exactly. And I don't know if even if when healthy again, I think it's more of the same. I think he's the 9th guy in an 8-man rotation kind of thing.
You hate that, man. Number one, size doesn't just grow on trees, and we don't have any trees to begin with in West Texas where you could find some size, but you just hate to see that not able to be, more consistently or better utilized for whatever reason. And the glimpses were there a season ago, but it hasn't progressed like we hoped this year. But the year's not over, so we'll see what we get. Thank you for the questions regarding EY. Rolling on, this question from a couple of different folks as far as this immediate future for the Matador Club, Chris. Dylan, Ryan, Ed, Logan, all weighing in on this, asking about the Matador Club and whether it's in a winding down sort of state. Is the Matador Club growing with donations? Do you know what 2025 looks like for it as an entity? Does it kind of transition into something else? Does the door close totally? Do we know
it is growing. It is needed. And we've got we deal with it on RedRaidersports.com, trying to just stoke the fires a little bit, because it doesn't matter if somebody's giving $5 a month or big, it all helps. Yeah, it all helps. And I'm not ready to say that it goes away, because even if some of the talk about collectives being dissolved and everything, it would still be large in part a thing just under the Texas Tech / Red Raider Club umbrella or part of it. So but that would be at the earliest. That's like several months away from that being reality. And I don't know if we just have a good grasp on. They're still litigating collectives and NIL and what is going to be allowed and what's not going to be allowed and all these things and Title IX. I mean, there's still all kinds of things still up in the air. I think that while realignment has taken up a lot of our summertime or off-season time in recent years, I think that's what this spring and summer is going to take up a lot of our time, in that it's not near as fun, but exactly structure, lawsuit or promises not to sue, the rev sharing, the Title IX.
Chris, over my dead body, will you take my summer of realignment for lawsuit talk? We'll see about that. All right, cold dead hands, you'll pry away realignment fever.
that's. I mean, there's just not going to be any realignment, but that's what's going to make all the news. And like you're seeing some of the playoff expansion. That's what's going to fill up a lot of the talk. But I mean, I think that even while it's sexier to talk about the playoff expansion and seeding and all these things in the immediate or off in the future, bloating it to 14 or 16 or whatever, and automatic qualifiers, a lot of these meetings with these conference commissioners and athletic directors, that's what's spending a lot of their time is like rev share, the house case, and all that. So and the Matador Club is or the collective component, and NIL is all factored into said conversations. I don't like, I don't mean to, I know we don't have a limited amount of time here. So I want to, like, here's the way I look at this. You're telling me that you're going to do away with collectives and you're going to do away with NIL, and it's going to be more traditional, and who's going to police it? Well, they're talking about this clearinghouse. So you're telling me that they're going to get to sit in a room and rule on what somebody thinks an autograph signing is worth, a commercial is worth, whatever is worth. Okay, who gave them the power of the market to determine if I own a restaurant and this is what I want to pay this athlete to come in and sign autographs or do a commercial for me? It's whatever I say it's worth. You don't get to tell me. Yeah, you don't get to tell me what it's worth. And if I want to spend my money, or because like, do we realize how many of these coaches out there in the world or these coordinators are making salaries that are frankly dumb in a lot of cases? Like, that didn't go through a clearinghouse. It should have, so why do they get to operate in a free, and the athlete is like held in a certain, so somebody's going to have problems with this. And I think people do.
Oh yeah.
And they're going to cry foul. And that's why I'm just not ready to. So to wrap that up, keep helping the Matador Club if you are able. It is a valuable entity, and you are the standard in a lot of cases in this space because of people like Cody and Dusty and Mark McDougall and Tim Culp and Gary Peterson, and on it goes. And I think that's why you are kind of flexing a bit in this space, because you're so well organized and well run. So there you go.
Yeah, and shout out to my buddy John also, who had a subscription, I guess, or whatever, a regular donation show up on one of those services that finds everything you're spending money on, so you can get rid of subscriptions. Kept that one around. It survived. He may have cut off the heat. I don't know, but he kept the Matador Club pipeline rolling to whatever amount. Appreciate all of you out there contributing. And sounds like it is definitely not bye-bye time for the Matador Club in whatever version it may take over the course of this year. All right, thank you for those questions about the Matador Club. This question as well, sort of in that realm, Clay, and he's just down to brass tacks. Will Cody pay $1 billion for us to join the SEC?
I mean, I don't envision.
I'll give you some time to research that, maybe.
Yeah, I don't envision a scenario. I mean, I don't know what all this looks like. I don't think you would ever go the SMU route. I don't. But I think we don't know what we don't know.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Well, what does everything look like when that time would potentially come? I do think that, the Codys and Johns and Dustys and these folks that we've mentioned of the world will do what they can within reason to really help out Texas Tech financially in whatever that looks like. And but that seems a bit much. And you know what? I wouldn't want to pay them a freaking penny. Screw them. They're trying to. Vanderbilt should have to pay to stay in it. If we're talking, it's just some of it is just so dumb to me.
I don't want to pay them a penny either, but somebody else's mini pennies, I'm very comfortable with actually allotting those.
Okay. So it's not your money. Yeah.
Stay tuned. Yeah. All right. Thank you for that question. Thomas and Rhett were both asking sort of similar questions about future recruiting intentions and or efforts. Basically asking, should we expect a similar push for high school football recruiting like we saw with the portal, or is there some type of separation as far as, say, those strategies or the resources thrown behind them?
So I think and again, we're kind of operating somewhat blind based on kind of having an idea of what we think it's going to look like, but not necessarily knowing. Meanwhile, recruiting is going on right now, and it doesn't stop. This is what I would say. This is the best way I could answer it without having all of the info. This is the way I think they're going to operate. There is as much emphasis as they've continued to put on it from the high school standpoint. However, I think that with everything going on, you being a full rev share team or program with your facilities and whatnot, and everything else that you can kind of do without knowing what all you can do, I think you're going to aim a bit higher in the high school space and maybe not fill a full class out necessarily, but you may try to operate in the let's take a long hard look and really go all in on the really, really good ones, and try to, so there's some wiggle room there, and that's an eye of the beholder on the really good one part too. I don't think you'll see them take a lot of reaches like you would have in the past, developmental types, things like that. So I think could be some subtle differences in the way that you're looking at recruiting. But Blanche is still on staff doing his thing, and they still have a lot of the same criteria. But again, the rules may change, and so maybe you can have a conversation with a different kind of athlete now based on revenue sharing, and if the space is a bit equal. And I think that allows you to get into some different conversations with some of the higher end folks, like the amount of them that you could maybe attract. Because there's a lot of talk, man, that a lot of these Big 12 schools aren't going to be full rev shared programs. They just can't afford it, or don't know what that looks like yet. And so, but it's not always about the money either. Some folks may, hey, I just want to be closer to home, or this is where I'm a legacy, or whatever. But I think that you've got a lot of boxes that you're checking on. Man, I can, there's a lot pointing me in a positive direction if I were to attend Texas Tech. So
it's not always about the money, but a lot of the time, it's a lot about the money. So something to keep in mind. And I do think, going back to something we mentioned earlier in the episode, maybe the revenue sharing line is kind of where that line is drawn in the future from, say, Power 5 inclusion down to now revenue sharing inclusion.
And I think, Joey, their biggest task is to try to find the really good ones and be willing to pay them, and it not be about the money, if that makes sense. You risk if you just hire. Yeah, if you're trying to just buy the whole thing, when adversity hits, and it will, you're in trouble. But so trying to find the kids that love it, that all the right things, and then be able to take care of them and keep them, that's the trick. And I think that's what, you try to whittle it down and try to find the sweet spot on, okay, this dude's really good, but plus, man, he's a dude. He loves it. He and that's really what you're ultimately trying to find. And that's why there's the personnel department has such a huge role in this, because they can vet a lot of the background there on how a kid's wired and all those kinds of things.
And regarding the dating analogy, if you're just trying to buy it, that's only legal in Reno. So that could be a sticky situation depending upon where you are. Thank you guys
Nevada.
for that question.
Reno, Nevada.
With this question,
terrible city.
asks, has Christian Anderson earned himself a nickname yet? We got a D5. How about something more explosive, C4? And I'm putting this to a part of the broadcasting team. So, Cody, we could get this from a flagpole real quick. What do you think, Chris? C4?
Like C4 is like explosive, kind of. Yeah. That's right. I've been calling him CA some. I just think, it's just easier off the tongue, and I try not to get into too many nicknames, just because it blurs the lines when you're broadcasting, because you can't assume that everybody knows who the heck you're talking about unless you just say Anderson for 3 or Christian Anderson, whatever.
Right.
I hope that we have every reason to give him a nickname, and he is, because what I ultimately, and I've kind of maybe drawn this conclusion before, but to me, he's a much better version at this stage, but he's got a chance to be like a Keenan Evans type guy here. And I say that with the heaviest of compliment and praise that you can, because I think Keenan Evans is one of the best players that has ever stepped through this program. And he exited as such and took this program to heights at the point that he left that they had never reached. And now they did go a bit further the year after he left, but he would have been Big 12 Player of the Year had he not broken his toe and had that injury in Waco on an unfortunate night. And you would have won a Big 12 championship. I will never be convinced otherwise. And it just wasn't meant to be for whatever reason. But he took you to the Elite Eight, and he was the biggest reason why. And you hear these stats that JT Toppin with the 30-plus point games and things like that. First since Keenan Evans. Keenan Evans was the last guy that did that in a Texas Tech uniform. And so I think that Keenan grew to be this player. He didn't step in as this. And Christian has kind of stepped in as a younger version, but he's much better than Keenan was at this same stage. And so that's what I really am hopeful for CA or C4. You take your pick. We can negotiate on all that, but he could be somebody we grow old with that walks out of here very accomplished and decorated, and he's got it all, man.
You got to love it. Shout out to C4. Light them up. Thank you for the question, Cody. Appreciate you. Next question from Wayne, who says, it seems we are avoiding the quarterback question for this year's team. What is Morton's status, and are we looking at alternatives yet? But to hear the answer to that one, you're going to need to be a Matador Mob insider. So hit the show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial. If you're out there right now and you're not a Matador Mob insider, this is where we leave you. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you don't miss a thing, and become a Matador Mobster today for less than a cup of coffee a month so you can get the full Mailbag experience next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Hope to see you back for the next round. And Chris, appreciate your time throughout the week, man. Enjoyed it all. We got some hoops to enjoy this weekend, and we'll reconvene to process it on the other side.
A couple of monster hoop games, 2 and 3 days, and they are massive for seeding and just trying to maintain a bye in the conference tournament, all those things. And you're going to be playing in one of the biggest games in the country on a Monday night, but you got work to do before that. So I hope to see everybody at the arena over the weekend and then early next week. It should be fun. And you're running out of home games, folks.
Yep.
There's not a whole lot of time left to see these guys and the work that Grant's put into this team. So guns up. Hope to see everybody at the arena over the weekend or even on Monday.
Only so many more opportunities to get lathered up at the USA with all of our Red Raider friends. All right. Appreciate you guys for being out there all week long. Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. For Chris, I'm Casey, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.